Blessings and greetings to all. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. Welcome to Unify. My name is Crystal Mishra, and I am honored to facilitate this deep dive into the Gene Keys Dream Arc with Richard Rudd and Rosie Alonso. Richard is the founder and creator of the Gene Keys. He has a special place in the hearts of the audience of the Unify community. Many spiritual seekers, such as myself, have been anchored deeply into the wisdom and tools provided by the Gene Keys transmission. We have all been designed for greatness, genius, and universal love, but many of us have lost our capacity to connect with this truth within. Think of yourself as the most highly intelligent, sophisticated piece of architecture or software. The Gene Keys help reveal the algorithms and patterns of our consciousness so that we can bring to light the codes in our DNA. Richard is an author, poet, mystic, and has an extraordinary personal story. In 2019, he was named on the Watkins list of the 100 most spiritually influential living people. Rosie Aronson is an inspirational artist, author, teacher, guide, and ordained spiritual counselor with a master's in expressive arts therapy and a doctorate in intuitive listening, with many years experience training in both the Gene Keys and human design. The last 3 years, Richard, alongside Rosie and many others, have been working on a new transmission of the Gene Keys called the Dream Arc. This is a mystical and mythical romantic approach to the Gene Keys. At least that's the way that I interpret it. It gives a whole new dimension to the meaning to the term, a dream come true. And I cannot wait to dive in deeper. So thank you so much, Rosie and Richard, for being here with us.
Thank you, Crystal, for that lovely introduction. It's lovely to be here.
Yes. Thank you, Rosie. So when I first started diving into the Gene Keys, I was really blown away just by the introduction itself. The level of information you provide was so profound, and I would love to be able to read a little bit of glimpse of that, if you don't mind, because it really touched me. It was something that really called to me. And it says, just as dreams do not follow the laws of time and space, neither does the dream arc. Consider this. Every night, whilst you are dreaming, you are in fact laying down the energetic blueprint of the next day of your life. Armed with this truth, you are invited to consider a few of the possibilities of working with your dreams. If you can influence your waking life through your dreams, then that means you can change your destiny while you are asleep. This is profound, and I would just love to explore a little bit more about what this means to both of you.
Oh, thank you, Crystal. So it's jumping off right into the deep end. I guess, like the dream arc is very different from. It's based on the same matrix as the Gene Keys, so it's an exploration into the codes of consciousness. But unlike the Gene Keys, which have more of a linear approach where things unravel in sequences and through algorithms given to you by a profile, which, by the way, if anyone wants to get, it's on genekeys.com. You can look at your free profile. And that's a whole journey in itself, and it's incredible. And as you said, I mean, I think it is, and many people love that journey. The other way is to look at it from in a completely different way, which is not to have any of the algorithms, not to have a profiler or profiles or those kind of things, but just to launch off into the unknown of the code itself. And that's a completely different way. It's a right brain approach. And so just to set up in responding to your question, like the way that this works in the dream arc is that all those codes and words and the language of the Gene Keys, which is framed in a psychological perspective through shadows and gifts and cities, which are like divine essences. So we each have these shadows, this fear nature, and then we have this capacity to unlock the fear nature and find its gift. And then as that gift flowers, it becomes a divine manifestation, an enlightened or awakened aspect. So what that does in the Gene Keys, it gives that's that framework of the language is those archetypes arranged. So 3 sets of 64, if you like, 64 shadows, 64 gifts, and then 64 essences, cities they're called. And what we've done with the dream arc is we've translated all of that psychological language into animals, right? So it's kind of a wild idea. Mm-hmm. So all the shadows and the fears, we call them the fear keys, 64 of them, have become underworld creatures, like worms and snakes and fish and insects and things that slither and creep and crawl and bite us, and that we are often afraid of. And then all of the gifts have become mammals, and then all of the divine expressions have become birds. And so what that does is it gives a whole framework, a sort of animalized or animistic framework for the same code. Mm-hmm. And then you can enter into, it's like the jungle, right? So the gene keys, you might say, or human design or any of those other things, are like neatly clipped gardens where you turn a corner and there's a beautiful view and you're like, wow, look at those, smell those flowers, taste that, explore that. And then you turn and there's another one. The dream arc is like pure wild jungle, no paths, nothing laid out, only your intuition to guide you. Mm-hmm. So in a way, what happens as you move into the dream arc is the animals come to you. They come to you through your dreams. They come to you in real life. They could be birds. They could be all kinds of things. They come through our unconscious, through our imagination, through symbols, through brands, through all kinds of things that impact us on a daily basis. So there's all these layers of consciousness wound up through entering into this dream language that's populated by the animals. And the animals are symbols, they're symbols for something that lives inside us. So I kind of wanted to just frame, like, that's the framework of what we're doing. And then your question, and then I'll hand over to Rosie, is about how do we use the dream realms, to sow visions that then come to life. So in a way, the dream realm is the soil. It's like the soil, and we can plant a vision in that soil. And then that vision will go deeper into our unconscious and then take root. And in time, our unconscious will serve it back up, and it will flower inside us, and then it will manifest in our life. That's the kind of theory. It's not quite as simple as just doing it like that, because there are weeds that gardeners have to deal with as well. So sometimes we meet these weeds, which are fears, and those fears can choke the vision. So we have to tend to those fears through the fear keys, through the underworld archetypes. And so in a way, I'm sure we'll explore that in this conversation. Like, how do we tackle the underworld archetypes? And then how do they manifest as gifts, as mammals, as because we're mammals, how do they manifest in our life? And then eventually, how do they flower as visions, through the birds into our everyday life? So there is a whole technology around that. What I want to set up, and then Rosie can take it from here, is that the dream realm is continuous. So we think there's dreams, and then there's wake, and then there's waking. And actually, it's a continuity of consciousness. It's a quantum field that the ancient, we call it, some people call it the dream time. Mm-hmm. And so, from deep dreamless sleep up to dreaming sleep and all the layers, and then coming to awake, and then full awake, and then going back to sleep, and then drifting in and off, and then daydreaming and visualizing and running and exercising, all those states and stages of consciousness, even like heightened states, are part of the dream landscape. So it's all a dream. Over to you, Rosie.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, that was so beautiful. Mm-hmm. That was very beautiful. I'm just kind of taking it in. Sometimes when I listen to Richard, I get into a very receptive mode, and I'm just taking it in. It's like showering, bathing. And so it takes me a little bit of time to sort of transition into my own, what's my own way of relating to this. Yeah. And I think that's actually one of the biggest gifts of the dream arc, is that it really honors that we are all completely unique beings, and mm-hmm. Our lives are unique, all the different things that we run into on a daily basis. The landscape of our dream arc journey is going to be ours. So you shared before we talked before we started recording about some experiences you had, encounters that you've had with animals or dreams that you've had that have impacted you very, very deeply. And you have been working with the Dream Arc and looking at the codex, looking what Richard might have to say about those animals, and then you share about it with us. And then that awakens like a response inside of us. And you say, oh, well, I dreamed about this. And I might say, God, you know what? It's so funny. My daughter's boyfriend's middle name means the same thing as that animal that you just talked about. And then suddenly we're engaging in a dream together. And the thing that kind of links and just give me a little time to warm up here. I'm not so like immediately able to articulate my thoughts, because the dream arc is really for the right brain. It's like, it's very hard sometimes to describe what it is and to learn how to enter it, because we live in a world that really does expect us to kind of think rationally and logically and present things in a very structured way, and to be able to justify everything that we're doing and prove ourselves. And in a way, the dream arc is like this giant permission slip to say, actually, the world may have needed us to be that way and to function in those ways up until now in order to survive. But right now, we're living in a world that's going to need something very different from us. Yeah. Everything's falling apart, and we need to be able to rely on something much more guttural, much more intuitive, where we're using our imagination, we're connecting with other people, where we're playing with things, we're discovering things. We don't necessarily have the answers. We kind of slowly find our way through life. And we connect with other people, and together we start to pool together our conscious dreams, our unconscious dreams, the strange synchronistic encounters we have in the daytime, the associations we have with that, the book we had that might inform that experience or help us understand what just happened, a teacher that we have that we really respect that might have something to say about it, and then suddenly we're in an ocean together. So yes, I just want to give a shout out to the people who are like a little bit sensitive like me, a little bit, insecure when it comes to like coming up with the perfect ways of phrasing things or saying things, but we're deep feelers, we're intuitors, we're okay like letting go and surrendering to the unknown, and we're willing to let our lives reveal the depths and the meaning and the juice to us over time. And I think that's like the biggest invitation of the Dream Arc, is like, honor your uniqueness, honor your path, honor your way. We all have our own way of bridging the unknown with the known, and then co-creating something together. So that's my shot for now. I will warm up over time. Richard, Crystal, keep going.
That was beautiful. And it was felt, like I felt it in my heart. You're very genuine. And one thing that I can say for anybody who's exploring the Dream Arc, for me, it just connected me to my childhood self, which I really missed. We don't live in a world that is encouraging us to play with our imagination and be creative, to wander into different realms like we used to do as a child. Fairy tales and myths, like those were so, look at any child, they're so intrigued and inspired by those stories. And I feel like the things that we were very passionate about as children are codes. They're our calling. They're telling our adult self, this is what your heart seeks. This is your passion and your drive. And there's within those stories, there are different archetypes that we connect with, and that's why they have such a strong hold on us. And I felt like the Dream Arc was allowing me to play with that part of myself that I have probably neglected for the last 20 years that I've been an adult. So thank you for reminding us to go back to that right brain part of ourselves that love to explore and play, because that's where we can really strengthen the power of our intuition and our imagination.
And it's what we're going to need in the time to come. Really, we're going to need to be open to our creativity and to let our inner children envision a future that has nothing to do with what we're seeing right now, as all the current structures are falling apart. We're going to need to be collaborating and bringing something completely new to the table. And that creates so much courage to let all of those crutches that we've been holding on to give us a sense of who we are and what track we're on and what we need to do in order to become something that's respectable, or all that stuff. We have to be willing to let that go. And in a way, the Dream Arc is like it's a practice ground. It's a training ground to get those creativity muscles going, those intuition muscles going, those surrender muscles going, being willing to make fools of ourselves, being willing to be on a, being interviewed live and not know what I'm supposed to say. Like, this is a part of what the dream arc is encouraging us to be willing to experience, so that we can build a new world together and not just spend all our time just saying what we don't want, but really kind of say, what do we want? And let the dream world, let the dream time, our imagination, what's happening at night, actually show us what's possible. Because what's possible is way beyond anything that we've imagined up until now. So we're going to need each other's incredible imagination to move forward. Yeah.
And there's no previous experience with the gene keys and the 64 keys that's necessary to do the dream arc. For anyone who's been a longtime student of the gene keys like myself, the gene keys sort of give you the answers in a way. I mean, you still have to use your intuition, but there's definitely, like you said, Richard, an algorithm. But with the dream arc, it's much more intuitive. I have to really feel into my body, and I have to try and understand, what my body is trying to tell me about a certain experience that I'm having, especially with the experiences that are maybe non-physical. And I really appreciate that, because it's sort of leaving the heart and the mind and the masculine and feminine parts of myself to have to work together. And I feel a certain sense of harmony with the two systems. I don't know if that was intentional, but that's kind of what I felt with the two approaches to the gene keys. So are you able to elaborate a little bit more as to what was the inspiration behind having a right-brained approach to the gene keys?
Yeah, because I mean, it's the side of the brain I favor more, actually. And people probably maybe don't get that impression sometimes, because the gene keys are so well kind of scripted and put together, and and exact, and the language is precise and all of that. But actually, my comfort zone is more on the right side of the brain, because I'm more of a poet, and I kind of, that's where I want to hang out, because we live in such a left brain world, as Rosie said, and we've structured it so that it kind of has taken over our lives. The numbers and the money and the timings and all of that is just taken over, and the time itself has taken over our lives, so that we don't live in connection with the earth anymore, like our ancestors did, or like the Indigenous people still do, and some others, who live close to the earth, simpler lives in a way. And we've lost that simplicity, and like you said, you call it romantic. It is romantic. It's romantic in the deepest sense of the word, because we do have to, Rosie, you really nailed it, because, we are in a time of huge planetary transition, and it's a scary time. And in times like that, where anxiety builds in the collective soul of humanity, because we are looking and feeling like chaos is kind of coming towards us, we need like non-linear systems, because non-linear systems, which is the feminine right side of the brain, operate through shortcuts and wormholes and leaps of consciousness. They're not gradual. They're not like sequential. Like, there's not like, well, we can resolve these problems of the earth like this. If we do this and this and this, then we'll be able to fix that little bit over there, and then we can fix this bit over here. But the right brain is holistic. It doesn't work out all those computations. It just inherently knows that there's behavior that will kind of ensure thriving. And so each of us have to find that behavior inside us. And so the dream arc offers, as Rosie said, it offers us a training, a workout for the right brain, for the deep feminine wisdom in our body, so that we come, so we can handle the frequency of the change without freaking out. We actually can find a place of deep stability, of trust, of relational intelligence, empathy, and resilience, so that we're not thrown off by, social media or kind of frenzied, divisive kind of thought patterns of others who are freaking out. What's needed in the times ahead are people who are really anchored in the deep wisdom of the earth, because that's the only wisdom that's going to carry us through this time of transition. And as you've said also, Crystal, when we're young, when we're children, we're always told stories about animals. Then as kids, we love those stories about animals. And if you listen to all the creation myths of the indigenous tribes from all time immemorial, and the myths and legends, they're all populated with animals. And why do you think that is? Because the animals represent aspects of the world psyche, playing out. And it's really interesting that the right brain cloaks truth in a very mysterious way. So even like the very kind of state-of-the-art breakthroughs in physics and kind of cosmology and things, like where we're understanding tiny kind of processes, they're actually caught in a lot of these old myths, where if you can look through the kind of looking glass of, and you see behind the veil, you realize that those truths are actually encoded. The truths of the universe are encoded in these myths and legends and creation stories that relate to, they're always to do with animals and dreams and dream realms and these kind of different, mythic enactments. And so, yeah, it's about romance. And then we have to inhabit that romance in us, in our own cells and in our life. Because, the place, I guess, where we live out the right brain is through media and TV and movies and Netflix and all that. That's where we live it out. But that's fantasy, right? We've got to bring all that legendary, mythic stuff that we love into our living life. We've got to live it. We can't just watch it as a distraction. It's needed here. It's not needed over there through our distracted, lens. That's fine. We can have that as well, but we've got to embody it. We've got to embody those archetypes, those warriors, those tricksters. When you come into the dream arc, you meet these creatures, categories, warriors, tricksters, healers, unifiers, leapers. Those animals that leap, like the flea. The flea is the animal that can leap the furthest for its size. Think about what a flea represents in our consciousness. Think about a kangaroo. That's another leaper. And so there are creatures that represent the ability to make quantum leaps. And that's the kind of thinking, that's the kind of imagining we need. So each of these creatures that we interact with in our dream realm, in our imagination, in our everyday living life, they have gifts. They represent ancestral gifts inside us, waiting for us to awaken them. Yeah. So
can you dive into the categories a little more, because I thought this was so fascinating. So there are 192 animals that you reference in the animal codex, and every animal is a representation of the 3 states: shadow, gift, and siddhi of the gene keys. But you've also put them into these categories and these various archetypes, and you mentioned it briefly, but I wanted to know some of the genius behind those specific categories, and how did you decipher, which animals belonged in which category?
Well, I'll just answer quickly, and then Rosie.
Just go for it.
I'll just do the bit of like how I kind of intuited them, and then you can talk more about them, because they're so rich. I'm really glad you asked. But yeah, I basically have done it all intuitively, through, just through my, I don't know, just my right brain. They just came. I didn't know they were going to come. I didn't know I was going to translate the gene keys into animals. I didn't know which one was which. I started and I thought, well, actually, I kind of know what the lion is. That's like universal love. That's like a very solar symbol. Everyone knows that. And then you sort of begin to build on that, and they start to click into the right place. And then also I should say that's fluid as well, because those are just my intuitions, but the dream arc is very fluid, and it's encouraged for us to keep it fluid, so that if you feel an animal relates to another key, or has a different meaning than the one that I suggest, I love we really encourage, like, well, go with your intuition, don't go with what I say. Trust. Anyway, so for me, yeah, it was just about something that kind of unraveled in its own time, yeah. But then they are very rich, the categories, because they're the sort of framework of our journey through this program. But Rosie, can you like help make it real for people? Like, what's it like?
Well, tell me about the laughter.
Because at the moment, I'm just like telling a thing, and it's like, what is that? How's that in our life?
I resonated with when I saw that there was a category for laughers. I laughed out loud, because that's my thing, is laughing. I mean, everyone knows I have a very loud, unique laugh. And I just love that there were these archetypes that were so nuanced, but so relatable. And I just thought, God, this is brilliant. But how do you guys come up with this?
Well, I think Richard just shared that he has come up with these categories through his beautiful, synthesizing, incredibly creative mind. And I would never want to say that you're all left brain, Richard, because you are all right brain. It's all like the way that you're constantly linking things together and following the thread of your intuitive associations and the work of your life and what you have brought to humanity because of your willingness to just sit in that contemplative space and create all of these bridges between so many realms so that we can be the recipients of such incredible wisdom. I just really want to honor you for that. So huge, huge gift, huge gift. And I also want to just respond to this thing. But, one of the things, I'm Rosie, I'm not Richard, but one of the things that Rosie does is I take what I love about what Richard does, and I think, how can we make this accessible to more people, right? So whether I do it through my Wisdom Keepers Oracle deck, where there are humans and people recognize faces and there are stories, or animals. Everybody relates to animals. It is through myth, but it's also, we have our pets, and last night I dreamed about the cutest little piglet, and it made me smile. And you think about the videos online that people are most excited about, and they're the silly videos where like a frog makes friends with a crocodile, and everybody just wants to see that because it opens our hearts. We're all very connected to animals. So in that sense, it's like the perfect symbol to awaken a person's deeper journey, serious journey. And I just wanted to say, what I love about the categories is that they're very human themes. Everybody knows what it feels like when it's time to make a change, and how scary change can be, and how much we need support to be able to face what's being asked of us during a time of change, like on a collective level or personal level. Or we all know what it's like when we're being asked to take a leap, or when we're living in a world that is so full of divisiveness that we need to find a way to unify again, like to remember who we are, to remember that we're connected, to remember that we're not just in relationship with animals, we are animals. We're not in relationship to nature. We are nature. We're a living embodiment of nature. And to be reminded of that, we all need to learn what it means to be a true warrior. Like, what's worth fighting for? Like, what's a cause that's really worth standing up for and speaking out in relationship to? Being a warrior for love, being a warrior for nuance, being a spiritual warrior. What does that mean? And like you're saying, the laughers too, like these are heavy times. These are serious, heavy, terrifying, confusing times. And I don't know about you, but I know so many people who are experiencing more anxiety than ever, meaninglessness, just free floating anger, powerlessness. These are really scary times. So we need to find a way to access some kind of joy, some capacity to laugh and feel a lightness of being in the presence of this heaviness, these shadows that are just emerging from the depths, so that all of humanity can see it and hopefully heal it. And the healers, right? We're all in need of healing, the healers. So the question is, what do I need to heal right now? Where am I a healer? Where am I asked to become a healer, to step into my healer shoes, right? So all of these categories are put onto a life web. So it's kind of like a game. It's like a game, and it's making a game of our life. And it's like what Richard's saying, right? Like you can think about those virtual video games. I'm not a big video player, but I know people who are, and you kind of go through this landscape and you click on this and you avoid that. And then you click on this and you open this door and you go in there. It's like taking that whole concept and putting it smack dab in the middle of your own life. And so every encounter you have, or every door you open, or every insight you have becomes a player on this unfolding training ground that unleashes your creativity, your imagination, your intuition, and helps you take leaps, help you face scary changes, helps you become the warrior that you're meant to be when that's needed, helps you laugh when there's nothing else to do but laugh. Like Richard, you told a wonderful story in The Laughers where you had a deep, what would you say, like you went on a deep journey or a deep ceremonial journey, and you just went to the bottom, the core of the whole universe, and all that was there was this giant laugh. Like you tell this beautiful story. And so for me, that's what the dream arc is. It's like turning our life into this experience, and then having all these ways to expand our life, to open doors, to add meaning, to give us courage, to build our muscles for what's to come, for what's going to be needed from us. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but the life web is a holder, a container, and everybody's going to go on their own journey. Maybe everyone starts with the guardians, where they call in one of 12 very powerful animals to really be like the holder, the protector, the intention protector for our entire journey. And then we go in. And one person might be led to the laughers, and then the warriors, and then the healers, and then the hunters. Someone else might start with the hunters and then go to the messengers, and then go to the dreamers. And while we're moving through all of this, we're being inspired by amazing people. I want to just give a shout out to our contributors, because the Dream Arc isn't just Richard, it isn't just me, it isn't just Sally, our amazing Voyager, who I really hope that people experience, because she tells wonderful stories about her own journey and shows how it works. We've got Elijah, the incredible wizard, and then we have all of these contributors. We have musicians and visual artists and Indigenous wisdom keepers from all over the world representing different traditions. We have healers and trauma specialists and all kinds of amazing people who have poured their generosity into this container, out of which everybody can pluck out the things that intuitively speak to them and have a more enriched life. So it's really like a village experience. And I really want people to understand that once you're in there, you'll start to understand that it's a collaboration between your intuition, what's happening in your life, the incredible codex and all of the wisdom that's in there, all of these inspiring wisdom keepers and artists, and then all of the fellow journeyers, like who are going to be the ones that are actually taking this seed and turning it into that plant and turning it into that, what did you say, the beautiful tree, and then the incredible branches and the whole acidic epiphany experience, the divine essences.
That's fantastic, Rosie. I love it. I'd love to ask you, Crystal, like, because you've started the journey and you've kind of put your feet in, haven't you? Like, how's it been so far for you?
Well, I wanted to just also shout out the big labor of love that this is, because going in there, the amount of information that I had access to, I love that you honored these animals and these symbols in the purest sense. I mean, you make reference to different lineages of where these animals have been referenced to, and it's a historical account as well. So there's a lot of things I learned, and it made me realize the sacredness of these animals to a different degree than I had before. And you also say this beautiful thing about how, to some degree, we've been these animals. So we know them, and they actually live inside of us. So when they come to us, it's almost like something inside of us. So we have an external representation of something inside of us that's been calling. And again, it just reminds me to slow down, to pay more attention, to be more present, because everything really is communicating with me now. So more than ever, it's the subtle energies that you need to pay attention to, because we've evolved into a different frequency now. It's energetically, we're living in a different dimension. and we're traveling dimensions, and sleep time is the time for where these messages are also really coming through. So I have been responding very positively and getting very excited to explore that part of myself. It's something that at this point in my life made a lot of sense. So it's funny how that works out. But we were talking about epiphany dreams, and that was really interesting because a lot of us think that sometimes our dreams are just nonsense. It's our mind just wandering, and we have these experiences and they don't mean anything. But every so often you have a dream that is so real that what is real is blurred, because there's something that feels realer in a dream than maybe in your waking state. And that's when things become very interesting. And that's when we really need to start paying attention, because I've had experiences in so-called dream state that were more tangible and more real and more visceral to my being than just waking up in the morning and walking down the street. And I wanted to explore that, like, what are epiphany dreams, or maybe we can explain to people what that is, and how do we work with it? What's the magic there? Because I know there is magic.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, there's a great, as you come into the dream arc teachings, there's a lot of, especially in the introductory area, there's a lot of really great material that explains the landscape of dreams and dreaming, and the architecture of our sleep. And that, there's quite a lot of scientific stuff in there, of just not over the top, but just like, this is how it works. These are the frequencies of how our brain operates when we're waking, when we're sleeping, and these different layers as they come across each other. And it really helps us kind of grasp these different levels of dreams that happen. And and then I've also gone intuitive. So like, I've kind of named 3 essential types of dreaming, past, present, and future. Everything about the dream arc is arranged in these trinities, 3s. So you've got, like, the past dreams are where we are processing something ancestral or something from our past. And it might be something collective, something in our DNA. It could be a fear or a trauma that was passed through our ancestral legacy. And it might come up as a nightmare. It might come up as something that we are processing deep in our body. And so those dreams are kind of particular. And they often do relate to the fears that are carried throughout humanity. They could be collective dreams. Like, a classic one is the kind of the tidal wave, the tsunami dreams, the dreams of the end of the world. Those kind of, those are like collective fears or memories that are held in our DNA. And every now and again, those dreams come to us, and they're literally rooted in the past. And then there are present moment dreams, which are the ones that we remember most often, in a way, because they're probably the most frequent, because they're just us processing what happened today, or anxiety that we're carrying about tomorrow, and it's in our body, and it's in the topography of our brain, and it's just running through the neurocircuitry. And it's just, sometimes it's chaos, and it's like, we know what dreams are like. Yeah, things are all crossed over, and things don't make sense, and people are other people, and then I'm in that people. Am I that person, or is is it my sister that how come I'm that? It's all merged in the dream time. But then there's those processing dreams, and then there's the rare dreams that come from the future, and these are what I call epiphany dreams, and my nickname for them is top shelf dreams. And because they're like some part of your consciousness has taken it off the top shelf and brought it down into your waking reality. And those, people have always known that dreams, can prophesy things. They've always dreamed. People, it's littered throughout history. In fact, so frequently, some warrior or king or something had a dream, and then the dream gave them the information they needed to take the next move toward, whatever it was. So these are powerful dreams. I mean, I know you had one, but I'm going to share very quickly one that I had that really, as I was exploring these dreaming states, this dream was given to me And I'm not a big dreamer in terms of like, I'm one of those people that before I came to the Dream Arc didn't have much dream recall. Now I have a lot more because I'm in the Dream Arc, and it shows you how that works, and it enables dream recall. Anyway, so I had this dream, and it's about, and I think I tell it somewhere in the course, but I'll try and keep it really distilled. It was, my daughter plays football, and she's a really keen footballer in a good football team, and it's an important part of her life. And there's this one team in her kind of league that no one can beat. They're unbeatable, right? And it's sort of a bit of a thing that no one can beat them. And it's like, why are they in our league? Shouldn't they be in another league? Because no one can even score a goal against them. This is British football. This is soccer, by the way. So even to get a goal against that team seems impossible. And sometimes it's a bit embarrassing because the teams that aren't so good, they kind of lose really badly, like 20-0, 20 goals to 0 goals, and it's just sort of a bit humiliating, and all of that. So anyway, I had this dream about being in the football team with my daughter, and we took on that team and we beat them. And I was like, and I woke, and it was a powerful enough dream to wake me up. That's what Epiphany Dreams do. They wake you up, always. They wake you straight up, and you're like, and the dream's all around you. And it's like, its certainty is in your body. It's sort of cellular certainty. And it sort of stayed with me. And for a while, and I was thinking, what am I supposed to do with this? And I was thinking, and the next day I was thinking, well, maybe I should contact her coach. And I thought, that's a bit weird. He's just a football coach. He doesn't know anything about me, and I'm this kind of guy. And in the end, the dream was so strong, I sent him an email, and I said, I want you to know I've had this dream, and and I was listening to my daughter and the other girls, and because they're going to play this team next weekend, and I was listening to them, and then none of them believe they can beat this team. They're all like, oh God, we're going to play them. They don't have any belief in it. And I don't think the coach did either, actually. So I wrote to him and I said, I had a dream that we beat them. And in the dream, this is how we beat them, right? And I described that. And I said, I think, you should know this because none of them believe they can beat them. And I just left it at that. And I said, by the way, I do, this kind of stuff for a living. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm very happy. Anyway, so he wrote back to me and he was like, well, thank you for that. That's really, it's really interesting to hear. And that was it. That's the last I heard of it. And then that weekend, the match comes, and usually it's like 13-0, 12-0 or something like that. And they just, they hang on as best they can. Anyway, so this match comes, and they play absolutely amazingly, and like they've never played before, and no one scores a goal on either side. And the whistle goes at the end, and all the parents of my daughter's team are like, you've never heard such a shout or a cry of like, 0-0. It was like, and we were like, it was a major victory, and for the girls as well. Anyway, afterwards we came and we were like, oh my God, that was unbelievable. And even their coach of the other team came to us and said, that was the most amazing game our team has ever faced. It was fantastic. Thank you. And we were like, oh wow, he's actually human. Anyway, I got home and Ursula, my daughter, was saying, that their coach was completely different. He was animated. He instilled belief in them that they could win, and that they didn't, and she said he'd never been like that before. And his belief then got transferred to us. And that's why we played so well. And he never gave up throughout the game, the coach. He was like on them, shouting or encouraging, all the way through to the end. He didn't sort of give up. And so they didn't give up. Anyway, and then later, one final part of this is that my daughter was applying for a scholarship for sports. And on the thing she wrote, it said, what's the greatest sporting moment of your life? And she wrote that game. And I was like, oh my goodness. And it made me think that all the other girls probably feel the same in some respect. Like, so what that dream did is it went through a whole kind of journey to get back to itself and then communicate itself to those girls, so that might be a major turning point in their lives, to know that when they're faced with insurmountable odds, they actually can prevail. That's a deep psychic experience in their lives, and I guess in the coach as well, and in mine in some way. So for me, it was the dream came from the future. It prophesied the future, not exactly, because we won in the dream, that I had, but we did win. Energetically, we won. So it wasn't, the details weren't the same, but the result was the same. Mm-hmm. So in a way, you look at those dreams and you realize they come from the future, into the present, and then they kind of reenact the future. So they break the timelines of consciousness. Mm. And anyway, I wanted to share my dream because it kind of did that really well, and it helped me understand those types of dreams, which I didn't understand before. They're here to be acted on. They have to be in some way, or they kind of come out, they spill out into our life, and they change the way we are in some way. And that can impact many other people, as in my dream. So anyway, I know I'd love, I was a bit long there, but I think it was worth telling. So
yeah, beautiful.
Can I just add one little thing or just celebrate one piece of that? Because one thing is to wake up and remember a dream, or to have an intuitive hit in your daytime, or to see a sign. One thing is just to recognize it. And that's like the first thing we have to learn to do, is like recognize it. And then it's another thing to honor, value, trust it. And then it's another thing to act on it. And I want to acknowledge what you did there, Richard, because you had to overcome whatever awkwardness that there might be to talk to a very three-dimensional coach who may not be into woo-woo stuff, right? And say, hey, I had a dream, right? And if you hadn't overcome that little awkward moment and dared to take seriously whatever was trying to come through from the future to you through that dream, you wouldn't have experienced, or the whole community wouldn't have experienced, this kind of snowball effect of the dream making its way into everyone's psyche and actually creating this an amazingly empowering experience for a whole community. And so I think I just want to highlight the importance of that in the dream arc. It is really a place where we're encouraged to start noticing the messages wherever they're showing up, to honor and value them, and to take the risk of acting on them. And then to be open to the fact that once we release it, they have their own life. They go out into the world, and then other people start to combine their insights and their intuitions and their dreams. And then suddenly something, what did Starhawk used to say? She said, when the impossible becomes the inevitable. Mm. That's kind of what I think your story really shows. And it's so inspiring.
Cool. So I love that. The impossible becomes the inevitable. That
I think, Crystal, I mean, your dream was amazing. If you can share it a little bit.
I'd be happy to. So the morning that Richard and I were to connect, I hadn't spoken to Richard in I think maybe 6 months. So we were going to be meeting this morning to talk about the dream arc. And that night I had the most visceral dream I've ever had. And it was in my dream, it was me with a child in my hands, and there was another young child sort of next to me, and they were my children. And I saw their eyes, I saw their faces, I felt their energy. It was all my senses were connected to them. And in the dream, I was communicating. So I was lucid in a sense, because I knew I wasn't there. It was a future me that was communicating to me now. And in the dream, I was saying to myself, like, in present day, it's all here. Like, these are your children. They're all coming. They're all a part of you. Like, exactly what you're dreaming about right now is going to be tangible. And it was a confirmation. And I woke up, and you talk about cellular knowing. There was a cellular knowing inside of me that was truth. You can't tell me otherwise. And I didn't feel a separateness from that dream. It wasn't a dream. It was a flash, and it was very emotional. It was very emotional for me, because it was a glimpse into something that felt wasn't just a dream. It was real, and it's something that is a part of me. And I told Richard that morning, I've never had a dream so tangible. It wasn't a dream. It was like a movie that I got to watch. and know that present me right now was creating that movie, was creating that vision. And that just happened to be the morning that I was connecting to Richard. And it just reminded me of, you know, the very first time we spoke, when you saw my gene keys and you saw the 55, I have the 55th gene key in my vocation with the 5th line. And, you know, Richard had a prophecy about, hey, you know, that might mean that you're birthing something. And so I'm just connecting and weaving now the dots. So it was really powerful.
Yeah, it's beautiful, really.
So cool.
Yeah, and I know. So dreams, you know, I would love for you to just, I don't know if we're running out of time, but there's something that just really hit me with the dream arc. And I think people would really value from understanding this a little bit more, which is understanding what imagination really means. You know, we talk about how we can plant seeds during our dream time to actually manifest in our waking time. You know, it's a really powerful tool, and how we can push images through different layers of our conscious and implant seeds within us so that they can manifest. And this takes a lot of mastery of the mind, and really connecting to the heart and the vision we have in our heart, as opposed to, you know, whatever external limitations that we might be experiencing. And I've never heard of anyone talk about imagination in such a powerful but also really practical way. You know, imagination isn't just fantasy, it's a real tool for creating our life. And I don't know if you guys want to talk about that a little bit, but that's the biggest thing that I took, that I am so grateful for, is that, you know, sometimes us right brain people, us dreamers, are living in the clouds, and it's like, no, like there are tools there that you can use to build your dream, to create your future, and to realize whatever your heart is truly desiring.
Rosie, why don't you start that one?
Kind of, I don't know, this feels a little bit like a Richard question. I think I like that you're bringing up the imagination, Crystal, because sometimes we talk about dreams, it can be a little intimidating to people. Like they're like, oh, well, I don't have these incredible dreams, or I don't, you know, some people don't even know what their dream is for themselves.
Remember.
Right? Yeah, they don't remember. Yeah, and so one of the messages I just want to make sure that people receive is, you don't have to be a big dreamer in order for this to work for you. Mm-hmm. And I think imagination is maybe the key to that, because everybody can imagine. And when we're encouraging people to work with dreams, or just to work with the fact that life is but a dream, it's all happening. Just like in a dream, you have different players, and you know that they're each actually you, they're aspects of you that are playing out in this field, so that you can experience yourself in a more holistic way. That's kind of how life is. Like all the people in our lives, all the animals we meet, all the experiences that we have are like figures in a living, evolving dream. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm always just trying to, like, how can we just make everybody feel this is very accessible, it's happening all the time, and you can always just use your imagination. So let's say someone has a dream, and maybe they wake up and they have a feeling it was a big one, but they don't remember anything from it. They can just make it up. It's like, maybe you remember one feeling that you have. I remember feeling full in my heart. And then they can say, okay, so let's just imagine that I'm going to use my imagination to just like expand upon that. Okay, so my heart gets so full that my arms outstretch, and suddenly there's this giant vulture bird with wings outstretched that rises up behind me. Like maybe in your journal, you just start making it up. You just let it unfold. And then suddenly, if you take it seriously, if you notice that you take it seriously, you follow the thread of your curiosity in relationship to it. So in the dream arc, that might include going to the codex, learning about a bird, if that's what you see, or if you can feel my heart is opening and it feels warm like the sun. It feels warm like a sunset. So that day you might actually go and watch the sunset. and just be present and relaxed and let the sun's warmth pour through your body and see what arises. Like maybe you get an image of your great grandmother who used to bake bread for you when you were little, and you had such a warm, beautiful feeling in your heart and a deep connection with her. And maybe she's not alive anymore. So then you have a conversation with her in your imagination. Or maybe she is alive and you go visit her and talk to her and learn more about her life and learn how she learned how to make that bread. It's like you turn your life through the imagination into a living dream that is continually revealing meaning to you. And you use your intuition to get more meaning. You know, like to seek out, like my parents, it's so funny. My parents are not into this kind of stuff normally, but they're so into the dream arc. They're like having so much fun, and they're getting books about animals. And they just discovered this new book that was written by someone about how animals, like it's about how animals are experiencing the world in ways that we don't, because they have different senses than we do. And it's like opened a wormhole of curiosity for my parents. And suddenly they're learning things they never learned before. And for me, that is the manifestation of a dream without even knowing what the dream is, right? Because that's the other thing. We think our heads are supposed to know what we're supposed to manifest in our lives. But actually, our heads have no clue. Like, that's why it's so nice when a dream comes from the subconscious that gives us a taste of what it is that our soul desires, as opposed to what our minds have been entrained or conditioned to desire. So it's, I don't know, for me, the imagination, it's like letting go, trusting it's being revealed all the time, and then getting good at tracking those clues, acting on them, being curious in relationship to them, and letting them build upon each other, and then integrating them into real life experiences, like watching a sunset, like having a conversation with an elder, like playing with children. Like if you have a dream, right? Like, so how can you spend more time with the child within you? How could you spend more time with children, getting in that energy of the child to invite those children in, those beings who are knocking on your door and saying, hey, we can't wait to meet you. We're here. We're already here. You know, so I don't know if that it's a kind of a roundabout way to answer the question, but that's what comes to me. Yeah.
Should we give the audience perhaps a little glimpse into the codex? I mean, is there a certain animal that any one of us relates to at this current moment that maybe we can just explore so people understand, you know, what is a taste of what's in the codex? Does that?
I think we should. What about, do you want to share your story about the sparrow?
Yeah, okay, I'd love to.
Yeah.
You know, this was something that was very interesting to me. There was a sparrow that flew into my balcony. I live in a very big condo on the 9th floor. I didn't think the sparrow could fly that high. And then about a month later, I noticed there was a dead bird on my balcony. And I looked closer and I saw that it was a sparrow. I don't know if it was the same sparrow, but in that moment, my heart broke. Like, I just felt like, what happened, and the fact that it landed pretty much on my doorstep, I just felt not responsible, but I felt connected to its death in some way. And I was very emotional, and I didn't have the strength. My hand was shaking. I couldn't pick it up. And, you know, I told some people, some of my friends, and one of my friends actually responded and sent a picture of himself with a sparrow in his hand. And he said that a couple months before there was this injured sparrow on his balcony and he brought it back to life. So he ended up coming over and he picked up the sparrow, and the two of us ended up going to the beach at night and gave it like a little funeral. And I just felt really connected to this bird. And I felt like there was some kind of message there that I couldn't piece together, but it just really, like, it pulled at my heart, and I felt sort of responsible for it in some way, that I needed to honor it. And now I see sparrows running around and they just make me smile, but I've been very curious as to what that meant. And so, of course, when I got the codex, one of the first things I did was I need to see if there's a sparrow in here. And I was curious to know what it would mean. And if you have any insight, I would be more than happy to listen.
Do you want me to read from the codex, or do you want to do it, Richard? Do you have?
Sure. I mean, I maybe, because I've got it, I can do it.
Okay.
Maybe just a paragraph so that people get a taste of how this works.
So that's a vision key, right?
So a bird if you have a bird experience or a bird dream and it's powerful in that way, then yeah, it's bringing some kind of visionary component to you to contemplate, right? And if you're also into the gene keys, then the Sparrow relates to gene key 37. That's if you're into it. So you can also play that game. If you're not into gene keys, you don't need to do that. It's completely unnecessary. I just mention it. But it's about, I read this, that we are the Sparrow. We come to guide you in the art of working together. If we have swept into your life at this time, then it's time for you to turn to others for support. I'm going to jump to the last paragraph. The essence of humanity is its communal warmth. Open your hearth up to others. Invite strangers into your heart and home. You humans have a beautiful and ancient tradition that the stranger is God in disguise. Embrace this concept and discover that God is the friend and the friend is everywhere. Why let your individual pride prevent you from feeling such joyousness and unity? We sparrows know why you do it. You do it because you fear you will lose your individuality. But the opposite is the case. In opening up to the group soul, your individuality is only enhanced and celebrated even more. Embrace this paradox and open your heart to receive the support that you know you deserve. So if you get a sparrow like that, it's a real, it's like digging something into you and it's going, how are you going to find more support for yourself, Crystal? How are you going to what are you going to reach out? How are you going to do that? Because you've got to have to do something. Like the dream mark is all, like Rosie said, it's all about you've got to do something. It's not enough to have the kind of, you read the oracle card and go, oh, that's nice. You've then got to put it into action. So each one of these insights then becomes an act. Well, it's usually a stretch for us.
I mean, even hearing you read that makes me feel vulnerable because that means now I have to put myself in a position where I may have to, depend on other people, which I feel is a challenge because I've been learning to be, I feel like there's a part of the spiritual journey is to be less attached to others. So then you become quite self-sufficient. And then there's the full circle where, once you know you're connected to yourself, then you have to open yourself up again to others and know that no matter who comes in or out of your life, you're still solid, you're still grounded, you're still loving. And that's something that I am practicing. And I find it's very new, to learn to open myself up again in a non-codependent, non-attached way, but from a very open and loving way. And I think I'm doing a good job, but it is still challenging to do that. And and I appreciate the Gene Keys because it's a safe community, or I feel it's a safe community that I feel people can hold space for. People are able to receive me and receive my messages, and I'm also able to listen more deeply to what other people are going through. And this Gene Keys community allows me to practice some of these things that I'm working on in my personal life. So yeah,
fantastic. That sounds like a really good edge. That little sparrow kind of reaching into your heart. Yeah.
Very sweet.
It really did reach into your heart. Your heart broke open. It broke open. And I like that you're saying that you're feeling some vulnerability, because when I read about the sparrow, it says the vision of communal tenderness. It's really about tenderness and that vulnerability that is required when we really open up to experience our interconnectedness, our interdependence.
Yeah.
And I just want to add one little thing. It may be true, may not be true. You feel it out for yourself. But sometimes when in a dream, when we're presented with something that has died or someone who has died, it can be an indication that we have integrated something. That there's sort of we don't need it to exist outside of us anymore because it exists inside of us.
Oh, I love that.
And there might be, I'm just thinking, what I like to do is just think, okay, so you have that epiphany dream about your future mother self. Talk about communal tenderness with your children, holding them. and what do they say, being a parent is like living with your heart on the outside of your skin for the rest of your life. It's like, talk about a stretch. And it feels to me like there might be a connection between that future dream and this experience with the dreamlike experience with the sparrow, and the communication that's coming through that sparrow now about what are you going to need to do in order to become that woman in that dream that presented herself in that dream to you. Yeah. And sometimes that's kind of how it works, like step by step, we get little hints at what we're being asked to do to become. This is like the manifestation of the dream, right? That's like an example of it. And that's why it's good to always remember, like there's the dream time and then there's the waking time. It's still the dream time speaking to us, giving us little clues if we notice and if we receive and accept the invitation and stretch ourselves. Yeah. So I'm excited to see you bloom. Yeah.
I've got goosebumps up and down my arm because it so resonates on so many levels, and I'm pretty much giving you guys a little glimpse into, you know, so many other things are happening, and it's exactly the message that I'm receiving. So, you know,
yeah, I mean, what Rosie just did there was magical thinking, you know, which is what the dream arc trains us to do. It trains us to connect things, not fantasize, but actually find through our intuition, you know, where are the threads and links. And this is what the dream arc does. It trains us to be a hunter, to track, to find those wild paths through the forest, through the jungle, you know, that only our intuition can find. There's no one else can find those paths for us, really. You know, I mean, Rosie gave you a little hint there, but it's like you're going to have to do the work of like treading that path and where it leads you. So in a way, I love that you just did that so beautifully, Rosie. And thank you, Crystal, for sharing. I know we're almost out of time now, but that was it almost feels like a really nice place to conclude.
Absolutely. I mean, talking about wormholes, you know, it's about the answers aren't external. All the answers are within. And it's so much more powerful when it's our truth that we know and not something that we took from someone else. You know, it's truth from our heart. And that's what this allows me to connect to. And I'm grateful for that. So where are we taking this conversation? There is a dream arc course. I don't really call it a course because it's more of a dream arc experience, but it's launching in a couple days, or actually tomorrow, because it's going to be June 28th.
Yeah, it's actually already launched, soft launch, but we're kind of having the official launch on the 28th. So I guess even if you're watching this like in the future, if that's a kind of weird dream concept in itself, then the course is live, the program is live, and it's on, you can find it on genekeys.com under courses. And it's quite easy to find currently because it's right on the homepage. You'll see the big kind of animal sign where you just click, and you can watch a little trailer in there and explore all about the dream arc. And if you are in this particular time segment, then we are having, when is it? We're on the 28th. We're having Rosie and I and Sally, who's a member of our team, are presenting. Like we're going to show you under the hood of the dream arc. We're going to kind of display some of the ways, the features, and we're going to screen share how the program works, and have some embodied experiences, and listen to the community and answer questions live. And it'll be a 90-minute kind of, you know, exploration into the dream arc from the three of us. So if you want to know more, and also some practical things, you know, like how long does it take and that kind of stuff, you know, we'll be covering all those kind of questions. So please come. It's is it 1900 UTC.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, on the 28th. And if you want to, you know, go to Gene Key's YouTube channel, and it's right there, sitting there, so you can kind of click that, and it's also quite a nice channel if you haven't been there, or come to genekeys.com/events, or if you're looking for the course, just go into genekeys.com and it's under courses, so you'll find it easily.
Or just the dreamarc.com.
And we are a global community. The dream arc is a new thing. It's a new community. It's like, and the people are joining it every day, you know, and what we really encourage is do it with some people you love. Do it together with 2 or 3 people or more if you want, or family, or and enter into it with others that you love and trust, because you're going to want to share some of these experiences as they come to you, and you're going to want to support each other, but it's because it's all about the sharing of the stories and the experiences. That's what brings it alive. And anything to add to that, Rosie?
Just that in a sense, it's a little different than some of the other Gene Keys retreats that have a beginning, middle, and an end, right? Where people follow the same path together. This is actually, I don't like the word self-study because it's not really studying and it's not really to be done alone. But it is, the doors are open, and it's now a living landscape where people are invited to join at any time. You cannot be too late. There's no too late. And in the meantime, we're going to be finding ways to hold community, whether it's on Clubhouse or whether we have calls or whether it's inside the forums, inside the course, where people can be cross-pollinating, and one person might have just started and someone might have been there for 2 years, which is kind of an interesting dream thing as well. People communicating across time in this timeless space, which is the dream arc. So never too late to join. It's an ongoing thing. And then, yes, we are going to have like a group launch on the 28th, just to kind of gather the energies together and get people excited and give them a really practical sense of what it is. Because, you can talk forever about the dream arc, but really in the end, you got to experience it.
Yes.
Sure do.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a live webinar on YouTube on the Gene Keys page on Tuesday, June 28th at 1900 UTC, which I think is around noontime Pacific. So for those of us who are on the West Coast, and it's going to be yourself, Richard, and Sally, diving into all things related to the Dream Arc and the Gene Keys as we launch, as this new program launches. So thank you so much. I know that this was a massive labor of love. I just honor both of you for the amount of information, wisdom, and love, and art and poetry that's in there. I mean, it's really just a pleasure, and I think great for anybody to have access to.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. Thank you for sharing some of your story as well today. It was lovely to hear it.
Thank you, and thank you to Unify for hosting us today.
Yes, thank you, Unify. The Unifiers.
Yeah.